Welcome to Western Minnesota Steam Thrashers Reunion at Rolog, Minnesota. We welcome you to this new video of our 50th annual show. The first few minutes are of the old times, how it was in 1940 to 1955.
What I consider the first steam reunion, which happened in 1940. How it all come about was we were thrashing at the Garscott in that 40-inch thrashing machine. As long as I remember, we were in the Nelson run in 1940 at the dinner table at William Nelson's, where the talk drifted into steam thrashing again. And one, I think it was Louis Anderson was saying it would be fun to thrash with steam one more time. And they were all in agreement with that. So then they decided they'd steam up the Garscott again and thrash down at Grandpa Nelson's place the next Saturday. They came, we were down there and we thrashed. And we thrashed full. We had 8 wagons going, so we were pitching on both sides. And we thrashed quite a few acres that afternoon. The word had got out that we were going to thrash with steam again. A lot of the neighbors came. There must have been, I'd say 15, 20 spectators. As far as I know, just 4 or 5 of us living today that were at that first reunion. That's Arlen Nelson. He was just 3 years old. I myself, I was a bundle hauler. I was 14. And then 3 of my brothers were there. After the day was done, we'd had a good afternoon of thrashing, and everybody enjoyed it. And then they sort of decided that they'd like to do this again yearly, or team up to thrash again. But this was 1940, and then 1941, there were war clubbing. Then after the war was over, and I'd say in 47, 48, or 50, they started in the country, and all of a sudden, a lot of our help got drafted into the Army, so we didn't have the help. So
there's a scene from the first show from Rolog, which was held in October at that time. In the early 60s, it was changed to Labor Day weekend. Thank you, Victor, for making that motion. There's the thrashing scene back when we were stacking. Everything was stacked. Thrashing with a 28-inch case. There's Elsert Drawn, the Sawmill scene. He was the first one to bring the sawmill up to Rolog. Didn't have logs, he brought his own. There's the scene, I think probably a later show. Still parking on the grounds. And that's how it was in the early or late 40s, early 50s. There's Norman Nelson in his store. He was one of the founders of the Rolog show. He was secretary of the show for 22 years. He was also an accomplished artist. These pictures, drawings, pen and ink drawings you have seen, they are drawings of what Norman Nelson has drawn. There is a 3rd scale engine, another 3rd scale engine and thrashing machine that he built. There is the 75 Garscott that they owned. Thrashing scene down at the Arlen Nelson farm. They're practicing with a team of horses pulling up to the thrashing machine. The horses didn't want to cooperate the first couple times. Here's the scene of us reenacting the first show that was done in 1940 with the same steam engine and the same thrashing machine. There's four, well, I believe 5 of us that were there at the original doing. That's Bill Nelson and the separator, his son William Nelson, who operated the thrashing machine back in 1940. Here's Bill Nelson starting the thrashing machine. You always start up the thrashing machine slowly, build up the momentum of the machine slowly. There they are, pitching bundles into the machine. Big factory in the background there. Straw coming out of the blower.
Nice team of horses.
There's a layer that's set by a scale. You set it at half the weight of a bushel. So each one, she dumps every half a bushel. There's 2 old Chevrolet trucks that we crashed into. There's Ed Erickson with his Chevrolet coupe. His nephew getting her started. There is 5 of the original people that were at that show in 1940. Starting in the front there, left to right, is Herbert Ockery and his brother James Ockery. And in the back row is Bill Nelson Jr., and Arlen Nelson, Lawrence Ockery, and Robert Ockery. Bill Nelson wasn't born yet, but his dad was along as a separator man at the show.
I was only 3 years old, but I was hanging on to Grandpa's hand all the time.
I remember that.
And so I can't tell you much what happened there.
Got together in my dad's implement shop in Rowan one night and planned this. They had been doing each year thrashing just one day, just sort of playing, and it was drawing a lot of people. So that's when they decided to organize. And, I guess that was the beginning of it. We're sitting on the land right now, the original site. My dad owned this land here, and he leased it then to the show. And then as the show started growing, so we had to put up buildings, well then of course he sold it to the association. This side hill out here, where the Sawmill, that area, and it goes east to the main street, and then the woods and the lake back here. That's the original site. And this was thick woods back in here. As each building was put up, we cleared out some more trees and put up a building. That was every year from the very start. There was a building or two put up because the equipment was coming in and needed to be shedded. It was originally, I think, the third weekend in October, but it was in the early 1960s that they decided to go to Labor Day weekend. That it was so late in October, some nights it got so cold. I was just a young pup at the time, and my dad would have me and my cousin up some nights keeping fire in the steam engines to keep them from freezing. That's how cold it would get. And then when we went to Labor Day weekend, it also got to be a 4-day event then, instead of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then on Labor Day. Before it was a 3-day. Well, that was decided at the first meeting that to organize and elect officers. And then when it got to be incorporated, that's when then of course we needed a board of directors too. When they originally started out with just officers. The first show was, this is an estimate from the Highway Patrol because they were directing traffic. The first show they estimated 3,000. The second show 10,000. And in 1959, which would be 4 or 5 years later, 25,000 people. So this thing grew right from the start, very fast. But the show is still growing, you know, with exhibits. It's still growing fast.
I've been here since the first show in 1954, but all I did was walk alongside my husband and say, about the big machines. You know, they were impressive. Steam engines are impressive, and I was very much impressed with the machines. But you know, it was just, what do I care about a big machine? And it went on this way until, I don't remember for sure, but into the 60s, one of the fellows who liked thrashing came and set up a tent and fed the machine operators because there were such long lines at the e-checks or the ladies' aid stands around the grounds that it would take them an hour just to get their lunch. Milton Coulter, I think was his name, set up, got a big tent and set up an e-check, so he served them sandwiches and that at noon. Well, of course, that expanded, so the first that the ladies were involved was they started helping in that. And we got the kitchen of what we now call the e-check going and really worked at it. And before that already, the ladies had been bored with coming out, and not all men can leave their wives for 3 days and come home to a happy home. So they wanted their wives to come along, but the wives didn't enjoy it. So they started in, and the first years they made some soap and they quilted a quilt out in the open in all the dust. That next year when we had a meeting, they decided, let's make some sunbonnets and sell sunbonnets. And so we sold sunbonnets. And so we were making snapped shirts as someone came in and bought them. And we just kept on growing, and someone suggested we should start selling ice cream, and we sold ice cream pretty soon. We were really outgrowing everything, and now we have the Mercantile on Main Street, the general store, the boutique, and the Pioneer Ladies Building, I think it's called. Those are all containing things for women, besides the schoolhouse, the Main Street house, the farmhouse, and all these things that we involve the women in. So we really have a big group doing things all the time, and we just keep going, and it seems there's always something more. Right now I'm involved in the Main Street house, and there we have an old cook stove, and we have, the house is set up in the 1906 period, that's when it was finished. So we've tried to do everything according to that period. The house was donated to us. It hadn't been lived in for 15 years, except by wild animals, and so we cleaned it out, and this is the ladies. We backed a pickup up to the porch, and we started shoveling. And we did it, and we stripped every bit of the woodwork in the house and refinished it all, so we feel we have a beautiful home now. And we demonstrate it every year during the show. We have things going on in the house. We churn butter, we bake cookies, we give them fresh egg coffee, and just do all kinds of things like that to keep it going. In the Pioneer Ladies Building, they do rug weaving, they do quilting, they do tatting, hardanger, just all dyeing. They dye the new wool. There's so much to see that isn't just looking at those big old engines that look dirty. The start of the style show I was involved in, yes, that's a big feature now. Oh, that right after the parades. Joan Kiefer has been in charge of it, and helpers, not her alone, but she's had groups, and they have a lot of vintage clothing, and it is really an interesting thing. The first time Neva Grandstrom contacted some of us if we could find some old clothes, and so during one afternoon, I think there were about 7 of us who modeled some things, and she told about it. She wrote a little play anyhow, and had different members acting in this play, and it was fun. It was a fun time. But it's grown since then, and we knew all those kids, and now the ones that I thought of as little kids are becoming grandmothers.
About 1914 up into the mid-60s. At that time it was put on standby duty and was taken out of service early 70s. We got this engine in 1992. We disassembled it, shipped it on 7 semis, all except the mainframe, which had to be jacked up and was shipped on a special truck, and that arrived during the show in 1983. And assembly was started. It took about 4 years. So this is the 4th year we've had it in operation. We have no way of putting a load on it, so we can only run it at an idle basically. We start it about once an hour, try and run at least 15-20 minutes.
The engine was built by the Case Company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1906 and delivered in the Alice Chalmers Company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1906. It operated in the power room of their brewery until 1968. Our association acquired the engine in 1975, and the engine was transported to these grounds in 1975. The engine first ran here in 1984 and is run every year for steam show and often for the kids' day and steam school in the middle of the summer. The Pabst engine is a steam-operated electric generator, and it made electricity that they used throughout the brewery to make their beer. The Peroni brake is a device that's used to measure the brake horsepower of any rotating shaft. And our Peroni brake is set up that we can measure using the flat belt, 540 PTO or 1000 RPM PTO. And ours is based on a design similar to that built by a man from France by the name of Gaspard de Prony sometime in the 1800s. Peroni brake is a device that will measure the horsepower that an engine can produce. Once we get the engine hooked up to the Peroni brake, but as we're operating the Peroni brake, we adjust how much force we're asking the engine to produce. And by measuring that amount of force and the RPM, by using a formula out of your physics book, we can calculate the horsepower that the engine is producing. If I remember right, we built this Peroni brake in the winter of 96 and 97, and this Peroni brake first came to these grounds then for the 97 show. Now prior to that, Amos Rixman from Nashville, Illinois, came up at least 2 different years with a brake that he'd borrowed from another show to give us Peroni brake demonstrations.
Well, the horse area developed mostly an idea in the late 80s of Earl Herbernson. He had a team of horses and thought we should have horses up here. And we always needed, or it was always a problem of saying we can't mix tractors and horses because of the dangers involved. Well, in the late 80s we bought land east of the ground, and then Earl pushed to get a horse area started. They had a few teams out there giving rides one year, and then the next fall, why, I guess I stuck my neck out and said I would head up building the barn down there. And so we built the barn, and then the horses came and the people came, and of course in short order we said, well, it isn't a farm without a house. So then we started over again and built a authentic turn-of-the-century house. As the years have gone by, we've added more and more buildings. Until now we have a pretty complete farm site, including a blacksmith shop where they can shoe horses, and a harness shop, and storage buildings, and so forth. And we got everything back to the way things were at the turn of the century. There's nothing prettier than stand on Main Street in the late evening, watch the moon come up over the barn.
Railroading was in the heart of many people. It was the premier job at the end of the 1800s and into the 1900s. If you got a job on the railroad, you had the premier job. They paid well. They took care of their people. You know, you got railroad retirement and everything else. And that was, of course, the dream of my father. My dad was born in 1903, and he just desperately wanted to get onto the railroad and couldn't make it. An engine was found in Minneapolis, number 353. It's a switch engine. It's an 060, which means there's no lead trucks. There are 6 drive wheels that pull the load down the field. There are no trailing trucks. And bigger engines, they'll have leads and trailing trucks to help keep the engine on the track. But for a switch engine, it's not necessary. Sioux Line used that clear up into the 50s, and as diesel come on board, and of course there's so much more convenience and so much less maintenance, they switched to diesels. They sold this, they scrapped most of their switch engines, but this particular switch engine was sold to the Cooper Coke companies. It was 11 years from the time the engine was acquired until it got to Rolog and got to being operational. By serious restoration work, they put new tires on the 6 drivers. Trains have tires. They're steel tires, but they are tires. The cab had to be totally rebuilt because it was literally rotted to nothing. So they found out that there was some trackage available at Chirac, Minnesota, which is about 10 miles northeast of Grand Forks, East Grand Forks. So a whole group of members and semis and cranes and whatnot, all spike pullers headed up there, and members took up 2.5 miles of track. My dad was also built most of the cab, or a great deal of the cab, helped on the welding or building the new pieces for the boiler. So my dad pretty much stayed with this thing, and his dream of a railroad was coming closer. We have 5 cars and a caboose, and we can haul about 650 passengers. And we use it for a purpose. We stop at each end of the grounds, and we haul people from one side of the grounds to the other, and we make probably 3 rounds an hour. So we load passengers probably 1,500 to 1,800 passengers an hour.
Originally, when they found the William engine, they needed a boiler to operate it. And somebody had remembered seeing a large boiler out in Montana, just laying in a ditch basically, so they were able to purchase it and brought it back. The boiler was being delivered to a sawmill that was in operation, and the sawmill burned down before they could put it into use, or as it was still sitting on the truck. And so they just tossed it off as junk, and it stayed there. In '71, from start to finish, they were able to get it installed and was running that show. So that has been operating since '71 on the showgrounds. Originally, it was just the big coreless, the William engine, and then they added the Pabst engine and the steam hammer, and then there was the Ridgway saw, and now a few years ago we added a steam-powered air compressor.
Kids Day, I believe, well, we've been going about 10 years where we've held an annual day. It's always Father's Day weekend, the Saturday of that weekend. And we open our grounds to the public, to the children, kindergarten through, I think, 8th grade through 15 or something. They're allowed to come out, ride the train, see things up close and touch them. If they want to get and try, running an engine, steering an engine, we allow them to do that. And we feel that that's a really good way of getting the children interested in learning hands-on. When they come out to the show and it's busy, it's very difficult and almost a safety issue to allow them to do that. But on Kids Day, we're able to do that. And we have somewhere near 400 to 500 children that show up with their parents. And then they're also given a free hot dog and a little take-home gift. And the interest is just really growing. I mean, we can hardly keep up with our shuttles of the people taking these kids. We have team leaders that take them around to different, we'll have the sawmill runs, the train runs, the little train runs, the merry-go-round, the horses, plus other gas and steam engines going. And it's been a real successful thing for us. And the response has been really good because a lot of these kids will encourage their parents, let's go out and see the show. They come out to the show. They end up joining and being very good members. And I believe that's what's made our show a success, is that we've tried to focus on getting the entire family involved in here. It's just not a fella show anymore where they come out with a bunch of old iron. We have jobs. We try to gear our volunteer jobs so that there's something for all ages, even the young ones. We encourage the young ones to work with the older ones so they learn how to do, whether it be scooping ice cream or running a steam engine.
Several rare gas engines. A couple of them are only one of a kind. But the biggest claim to fame we have in the gas engine area is the largest assembly of auto engines in the world is right here at Rolog. We have about 15 or 16 auto engines owned by a number of people, but they're shown in an exhibit here, and that's the most engines there is anywhere in the world on exhibit. About 10 years ago, we had an auto exposition, we called it, or featured auto engines. We had a total of 31 on the showgrounds that year, and we said that was the largest exhibition of auto engines since before the First World War in 1916 or something, when the auto company, it was really auto company owned by Stryker and Shum in Philadelphia, still were selling auto engines. Combustion engines, gas engines as we call them, were used mainly in this part of the world on the farm. I can even remember my mother, we had one by the well and pumped water with it. Then it was on 4 little wheels, and she'd pull it up to the house, and there was a shaft going through the wall into the house, and she'd set it there, put a belt on it, so it would, and the shaft, the belt inside the house was belted to a washing machine.
Part of our 50th reunion this year, we brought 50 engines out to our terrace and lined them all up so that we could get all of those engines in one spot for some pictures, and just to get them all together we thought would be a real impressive sight. We were real happy to get engines from all over the area. We got them as far as Rogers, Minnesota, and New Rockford, North Dakota, and over South Dakota. Way up into northern Minnesota, had engines come from all over to help us out, to get us up to a 50 engine mark, which we did accomplish this year. We were able to just have a lot of fun with them getting out onto the terrace here. It's to get that many big, slow-moving engines into one spot is always a lot of fun too. But these engines were used from the late 1800s into about the 1920s or 30s for thrashing, sawing, steam plowing. We have on this terrace here about 10 scale model traction engines, and also about 50 full-size operating steam engines, all the way from 10 horse portables to 120 or 120 horse full-size traction engines. Pictured here we have some of the scale model engines that have been built by people over the years. Most of these all of these are hand built, meticulous attention to detail. Take most people that build these years and years to build them. We have some excellent examples at Rolog every year, and most of them come back every year for the show or stay at the show. Here's a picture. It's kind of right at the tail end of we did a 50 whistle blast when we had them all out there on the hill. They were steamed up, and it was kind of an impressive sight to see that many whistles in one shot. But had a lot of fun with this video out here. We were able to get a lot of engines together. We put the Garscott with the 40 horse case separator right up in front there to use as a centerpiece for the picture. Up at the top of the hill we staged some of the big engines, the 40 horse Avery, 35 horse Buffalo Pitts, 40 horse Advance engine out of New Rockford, 110 horse case traction engine owned by the Danny Rowan estate. I think the last one there on the line was the American Able, forget what size that is right now, and we also had the 45 horse Minneapolis, which wasn't quite in place. There you can see it there. but it was an impressive day to get that many engines all in one spot. Most of the engines that are seen in this picture are all privately owned. Some of them have been handed down for several generations. Others have been purchased in recent years by new generations that have gotten involved with the hobbies. Others of them are owned by the association, have been donated by families over the years that have been involved with roll log. Altogether, it makes a pretty neat mix. You get some real interesting people, anything from doctors to lawyers to just steam nuts like myself.
It came from the Burlington Northern Car Shops in St. Paul, and I don't exactly know when it was pulled out, but it laid in the weeds for a number of years, and we put in the concrete with a hammer base. It goes down about 10 feet, and the anvil portion of the steam hammer is sitting on a bunch of timbers to cushion the anvil. Each year there's a different theme, usually something that's relevant to the show or the national scene. Like one year we had the Statue of Liberty when the country was celebrating its birthday. And
my dad built the engine in 1958 in his machine shop. His name is Ted Lang. And it's half scale to a 40-horse case steam engine. He built it for his own pleasure, for something to, as a hobby, just to do. He knew Arlen Nelson up here, and when he finished it, he came up here for the first time in 1958. The first time I was up here was in 1962 when I'd just come home from the Navy. At that time, he was running the miniature sawmill up here with Ray Ennert from Frazee was running the mill, and Dad was running the engine. So they cut laths, walking sticks, and intermixed with stories and old friends. If you make a business out of your hobby, then what do you relax at doing?
So there are a number of gas tractors that are very rare at roll log. They go on and on of all the names, like Flower City was made in Minneapolis-St. Paul area, Flower City Tractors. Stickney built gas engines, and they were in the Twin City area. And those engines are very rare. Gas tractors at roll log this year, there are about the largest collection of Model E Rumleys, 3060 horsepower, built by the Rumley Company of LaPorte, Indiana, ever assembled. I counted about 24 of them here. Big ones, 3060s, and most shows, if they got one, they're happy. But there's quite a few here, and of course that's what they were using in their plowing. Hartpar was actually invented the word tractor. Before they started using the word tractor, they called it traction engine or gas traction engine, and they shortened the word to tractor, and of course it caught on. We have probably about over 200 of quite unusual gas tractors here. When I say rare and unusual ones, I'm always talking about those that have steel wheels. Now, real old-time collector considers a rubber tire tractor Who knew? We have more rubber-tired tractors than steel-wheeled ones because there are more people that collect them. And they are available. You can't collect what you can't buy. It costs almost as much to rebuild them and put new bearings, pour new bearings and do things like that, get them really nice, as it does to buy one. And it takes most people several years to accomplish it. Here are several big prairie tractors from approximately 1920. The first one here is the Red River Special. It was 3060. Another, an Avery, a little shorter, a few years newer. Then came the giant 6090, one Twin City, one of two known to exist, and a Tiger Pill by the Gar Scott Company. My, what a tractor. Then here's a smaller 20-horse International Harvester, big gas engine on 4 wheels.
The print shop started in 1972 with Bob Brecken, and the Hawley Herald with equipment was donated from the area print shops as they were switching over from letterpress to photo offset. And Bob has been active out here ever since, and the print shop works every day out here and produces a 4-page newspaper and joke signs and just demonstrates all the old equipment. In 1972, Bob Brecken and the Hawley Herald received a donation of a linotype from the Norman County Index. John Fund was the editor up there at the time, and the equipment was being phased out because of the changeover in the newspapers from photo offset to from the letterpress process. So all this good offset equipment was replacing some of this older equipment that's still functional, and the people wanted to save the equipment, so they donated it to Rolog with the idea they'd start a print shop. Bob Brecken and at the time the machinist at the Fargo Forum for the linotype section was Al Nordhaugen, and he came out and operated the machines and got them fixed up and operating, and we now have a crew down there that operates everything in the place, moves, everything is operational. It goes from an 1871 Washington press up to a 1951 linotype, which one of the last ones made.
Pete Johnson, the head blacksmith, invited me in and to pump his forge for him, the bellows. So I did that for 3 years before I ever picked a hammer up. During the mornings, usually we sweep and clean around the forges and light all the fires and get them going for the day. We buy them pre-made, the button horseshoes, and then we get them hot. We stamp them. We stamp them Western Minnesota Steam Thrashers Reunion, the initials. And then we put the year on there. We've done that every year for the last 12 years.
Well, the William Box and Lumber Company in St. Paul installed the engine in 1904, and they used that as their prime source of power from 1904 to 1958. During World War II, they went to 24-hour shifts. Normally, they would just run, first shift during the day, went 24-hour sevens during World War II, in which they were making ammo boxes and glider parts for the war effort. and it was installed here in 1971, and the crew got it out in the spring of '71 from the William Boxing Lumber Company, worked on it that summer, and then had it running for the show in 1971.
Back around 1980, Dr. Jerry Parker, a dentist from Castleton and a board member, had people questioning about how steam engines work. So he put on a couple of evening sessions at Larson Welding in Fargo just to explain how a steam engine worked to satisfy our members' curiosity. The next year, I teamed up with him. My name's Tom Hall, and we moved it out to Steamer Hill, and we had a weekend course in June. And at that time, we called it the Tom and Jerry Show. A few years later, we changed the name to the University of Rolog. We started out real small. Our first classes had 12 people in it the first year. The next year, one of our graduates from the year before asked if he could steam up an engine and help us with the class so we'd have a live engine. Well, the year after that, there were 3 engines steamed up, and it just got bigger and bigger. So did our class enrollment. Pretty soon the word grew outside of the Western Minnesota Steam Thrashers, and we started getting people from other clubs that wanted to work towards their license. Not everybody that goes through our steam school is interested in working towards a license. Some people are just curious. Some of the women that have taken the course wanted to know why their husbands have so much fun with these big, huge pieces of hot equipment. And it's been that way ever since. We just finished our 22nd University of Rolog course this June. Our course is always on Father's Day weekend. And we've had over 1,250 graduates so far from most of the states and most of the western provinces of Canada and from England. We were the only place in the United States and Canada that offered training in this for quite a few years. So we claim to be the best in the nation. If you want to operate a steam engine in the state of Minnesota, you have to have a license from the Department of Labor. And to do that, you have to have a training program, which is our steam school, and so many hours of hands-on operating experience. When they graduate from our steam school, they've completed 16 hours of their 25 hours required before they can take their license test. Once they take that test and pass it, they get a lifetime license from the state of Minnesota.
In 2004, we will be featuring construction equipment, so there will be many more items on display than you've seen in this video.
Talking about the Brighton and Rowan Sawmill, Danny Rowan from Comstock, Minnesota, has been a sawyer most of his life. Started with his dad and up till his recent death. He had this sawmill on his farm, and he sawed till times kind of caught up with his age a little bit, and it was a pretty intense, labor-intensive sawmill. So he came to Jim Brighton one day and he says, I think I'd like to donate my sawmill to Rolog. And it's been about an 8 or 9 year project. It took about 3 years to get it initially. All the footings moved in and the main stuff moved in. Got to do some sawing probably in the 4th year, and since that time we've been adding a number of features and additions to the sawmill, like a hydraulic table to handle cans. I have at least 150 horsepower on it, and now a lot of times we have it made up so we can use 2 steamers on at the same time so we can really feed through it. 2 years ago we added what's called a top saw. With a 60-inch blade you can cut approximately a 27-inch diameter slab. With the top saw now we are able to cut 39 inches. The man riding the carriage is just as important as the man on the sawyer handle, because they have to work together to get production.
They actually went up and selected and it was put up with a lot of volunteer labor. But some of those logs were under full 60 feet. log cabin has sort of been, center of this upper part of the grounds, and a way of preserving a lot of the smaller kinds of items of the history of this area. We've got our family has some things in there. My extended family has quite a bit of material in there, been donated. And then the Pioneer Wall really came about. We were looking for some way of remembering the people who had really contributed to the building of this show. It's a place I stop back every show in a quiet time. And I sit there and I go through each name. I know every one of those names. It's updated every year.
Also, we decided, I guess, the board and the members, to try and replicate this 50 plow hitch that was done with 3 of these big 3060 Model E Rumley tractors. So that's what we did here this year. I was one of the Rumleys, and another Rumley was from Canada, Murray Johansson, and Kenny Cass, also from Iowa. Both of those Rumley tractors were completely rebuilt, engines and just everything they needed just for pulling in this 50 plow hitch. And mine was in good enough condition to do this, so those 3 Rumleys were the ones that we decided we'd use because they're operating as they did in their original state, running on kerosene fuel and water. And so they're all ready to all ready to do it. And so in recreating this 50 plow hitch, which was just done as a demonstration of the power of fuel tractors during the transition time between steam and fuel tractors. And so this was never done to actually go out and do plowing. This was just done as a field demonstration. So we decided to recreate this field demonstration and worried quite a little bit about it, but we did a lot of studying and research on how it was originally set up with pulleys and shivs and chains, and fixed this all up and backed the 3 Rumleys up and hooked the plows all together so we had 50 bottoms. And at 11 o'clock last Saturday morning, Jim Brighton, the chairman, says go, and we threw 3 clutches in and we pulled the 50 bottom plow. Beforehand, the only thing I could think of that would attempt to synchronize these Rumleys and speed is we set the governors all the same, and we practiced the other evening here on the showgrounds by driving the 3 of them side by side and adjusting our governors until we had the 3 running just as close together in the same speed as we could. So, one wouldn't have to pull harder or lesser than the other. So we did that, and so it worked out really well on the straight pull. I don't think we ever changed throttles after we'd get started. The throttles just set the same, they stayed the same. And then the turning, we were quite concerned if we could turn, and you have to turn to the left with a hitch like that, which we did. I was the number 1 tractor, so I set the arc as we turned. I had to set the arc to where to come back. I left my throttle wide open. And of course the number 2 fell on the hitch a little bit behind me, doesn't turn as far. He had to slow down a little bit. Number 3 tractor on the hitch, he had to actually pull his clutch and wait a little bit every now and then, or just keep slipping his clutch a little bit because he was turning a much shorter arc than the lead tractor. But these other 2 fellows are all precision operators and long-time machinery operators. The Rumleys didn't vary in distance apart, or we just turned around. It just worked out. It was just good people working together, and we just turned around and away we went. So it worked out really well. We made 7 rounds at the plow site on Saturday. I guess we scheduled this from 11 to 2, just a one-time thing because of being off-site and the difficulty of setting it all up and transporting people there and getting all the equipment there. So we had one day to do this. The thing I guess we did not anticipate was that so many people would want to come and see it. So we had people backed up at the showgrounds here wanting to get on buses to go when we were supposedly scheduled to be done. So we decided we'd plow till the last busload got there. So as long, people come to see it. We spend a lot of time getting ready to put on a show, so we wanted everybody that wanted to see it. So we plowed at 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon when the last bus came. Somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 is the estimates I've heard, and it's kind of hard to tell in a crowd like that because people were coming and going all the time. People come on buses and they'd watch us make a round or two, and then as new people came, those people get on the buses and leave. But we had some people estimating that they're pretty good estimators, somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000.
I've always said that some of the finest and best friends I have are families, and I've heard it from many families, are the friends we have at Steam Thrashers Reunion. And that's the key word in our title, is reunion. As these people come in the week before the show and start helping us do all the last minute things which really pile up, because there isn't a host of people, enough people to get everything done throughout the summer. These people come in 10 days before the show, they just jump, they know what needs to be done, and they help out, and then the evenings we can spend having supper together in the Mercantile and visiting about what hasn't been done yet, or what have you done all summer, or what tractor you're restoring now, or what project. And that's, I think that is a real clue to why we keep growing, because of the fact that we include mom and dad and the children, and then the grandchildren. There's many families out here that are many generations of Steam Thrasher families. Number one, it's the people, and number two, it's the setup and how they can all feel a part of it. And I just, there's just many families that I can think of that have been here for years and years, and it just continues through. And I think that everybody has a certain niche. That's why it's out here. You'll have some that aren't tractor drivers, but they want to come out here and they want to work. They don't mind picking up litter, they don't mind stamping hands at the gates, and that combination of people from all the different walks of life is the other thing. Out here we all have that common bond. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor or a lawyer or a janitor or anything. At Rolog, because we're all paid the same, which is absolutely nothing. And I think we can be very proud of saying that we're the largest volunteer organization in the world. We have a membership of 5,600 people, out of which are 2,000 plus that are active, because that's how many people it takes to put on this show. And out of those 2,000, we're probably getting about 400 or 500 that come out during the summer and really work their extra 8 hours to maintain their active membership. So you have to keep the enthusiasm, and you have to keep people wanting to be a part of it. And I think I just hope this can continue. I hope we can continue with the enthusiasm of not just the fact that it's old and collector stuff, but that they're here because of the people and their friends that they've made and established lifelong friendships with all these people.
My, what a beautifully restored Alice Chalmers. Notice this young man driving a model heart bar built by Elmer Larson and Jim Brighton. Another model built by Elmer Larson. Young men learning to operate the equipment. The old Gar Scott is still running good, looking better than it did 60 years ago.
Western Minnesota Steam Thrashers Reunion has made great strides in the 50 years since its organization. The purpose and presentation of the show has in many ways remained the same as the originating members first proposed. We are a non-profit organization. Volunteer members work throughout the summer months to prepare for our show. Many of the members, workers, and visitors at our show are second and third generation participants.
Western Minnesota Steam Threshers Reunion continues to strive to be an affordable, family-oriented show. Visitors pay only gate admission. The only cost incurred within the show grounds is for food served by several local church groups or the show's concession stands. We also offer a variety of souvenirs available for purchase. We offer 2 daily parades, daily threshing and field demonstrations. We display 3 operating sawmills, a turn-of-the-century farm with live horsepower, a pony break, an evening spark show, old-time tractor pull, and countless other equipment and engine displays. If you want to fiddle around, we offer daily live musical entertainment. The fiddlers start early in the morning and will continue on early into the next morning. We offer ladies' activities and craft demonstrations. Take a free ride on our merry-go-round, our steam train, our model train, or take a free ride on our shuttle wagon service around the grounds.
On behalf of the Board of Directors, I hope you have enjoyed this brief overview of our 50th show. Some of our upcoming events: in 2004 we are featuring construction equipment. For 2005, auto engines is going to be our feature. And in 2006, an exposition of case equipment is planned. The Western Minnesota Steam Threshers Reunion is held for 4 days, Friday through Monday, every Labor Day weekend. Our showgrounds are located 40 miles east of Fargo, North Dakota. Our gates open at 6 a.m. every day. We have camping, food, and fun for everyone. For more information, please visit our website at www.rolog.com or write to us at P.O. Box 9337, Fargo, North Dakota 58106.
That's what brings me back every year. It is almost a real high knowing that Rolog's only a week away or whatever, and people are going to be coming in from Washington and Texas and Florida and Kentucky, and they're gathering where we all, kind of just are in our campers and in our campgrounds with primitive conditions, but we know we're all alike here. So, and we share that common bond of wanting to preserve part of our history. And